There's been plenty to get into in Formula One this week here at GPFans, so here is a very quick rundown of the top stories that we've been looking at over the last few days. Remember GPFans.com and GPFans Global on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok as well for all of your F1 news. So let's kick off with the bombshell that was dropped this week in the United States, as Andretti Global announced that they were partnering with General Motors Cadillac as the American racing stable continues to make its push towards Formula One. Andretti have been dipping their toe in the F1 waters, so to speak, in the last 12 months or so, with the team unable to secure a spot on the grid as they look to be the 11th team in the pit lane. This has been in part due to other constructors in Formula One fearing that any new team joining the grid will be looking to just capitalise on F1's growing popularity without really bringing anything new to the table themselves, as they look to avoid the mediocre enterprises perhaps joining and dividing up the Formula One pie by another chunk. But the partnership with GM, one of the biggest auto manufacturers on the planet, and the Cadillac name that has been synonymous with motor racing's success in multiple series, surely now leaves all doors open to the American constructor joining the grid. Now, no time frame has actually been given for when Andretti could join Formula One's ranks, but many expect it could be 2026, of course, when the new engine regulations come into play, especially with Andretti yet to announce who their engine supplier would be in the sport. That, though, is likely to be Honda, considering that Red Bull Powertrains are looking to take over the Milton Keynes-based team power unit operations by 2026, and Honda might want to stay in the sport. After the announcement from Andretti, Formula One confirmed that there have been multiple conversations over potential other new entries into the sport, with Andretti's being quite clearly the loudest, but others behind the scenes also looking to join in time for the new engine regulations. We all want to ensure the championship remains credible and stable, and any new entrant request will be assessed on criteria to meet those objectives by all relevant stakeholders, read a statement by Formula One. Any new entrant request requires the agreement of both F1 and the FIA. This is all great news though for US Formula One fans, as the Andretti name looks now set to be joining the ranks as the sport's popularity continues to soar in America. Elsewhere, Ricardo has said he was suffering from F1 burnout, which is why the Australian turned down the chance to pursue a seat at Haas for 2023. Ricardo will instead be sat as the reserve driver at Red Bull Racing, with many believing he'll step into the sidekick role to Max Verstappen if Sergio Perez struggles this coming season, although Red Bull have categorically denied this. This week, the veteran driver confirmed the story that Haas team boss Günther Steiner had reached out to Ricardo after he was axed by McLaren to see if the Australian was interested in joining the American outfit, likely as a replacement for Mick Schumacher. But the triple header of Grand Prix to start the second half of the season apparently opened the Aussie's eyes to the fact that he just didn't want to be competing in the same manner next season, admitting that the feeling he had could be called burnout, adding, "So in a way, I'm glad a top team didn't reach out, because it's one of those ones where you probably feel, oh, I've got to sign it, but I think deep down I was just craving a bit of distance." It could also be the idea of dealing with a Haas team that was struggling at the back end of last season after what was a pretty unhappy 2 years at McLaren for Ricardo just wasn't what the Australian needed in what was pretty much a bit of a career low for him. Ricardo instead gets to show off his skills in the simulator and in free practice with Red Bull with zero pressure, and perhaps will get a shot at one of the big guns in a year or so, potentially even at Red Bull Racing again. And finally, do you remember in 2017 when Sebastian Vettel intentionally bumped into Lewis Hamilton under the safety car? The then Ferrari driver Vettel has revealed that rather than putting the pair at loggerheads, that moment actually brought the duo together. The German driver was convinced in that moment that Hamilton had tried to brake test him, which triggered Vettel to pull alongside and bump the British driver intentionally. So irate was he that the race was slipping away from him and things in that moment weren't going his way. I reflect and I did think about what happened. As much as I may have felt in the moment that was not fair, not right, and I wanted to tell him, it was the wrong form of communication, said Vettel. It was not the right way and not sportsmanlike. I admitted that afterwards, and we talked to each other, and since that moment, we became closer to each other. It's definitely been a blossoming relationship for the pair over the last few years, as they've joined together to bring attention to a number of social causes and of course have been veteran voices in the sport. Vettel, as we've said before, will surely be missed, even by one of his former great rivals, Lewis Hamilton. For more on that and everything else in the world of F1, GPFans.com and GPFans Global on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok as well, and let us of course know your comments down below.